was always fascinated by swords and edged tools and knives and all this thing.
What's the goal for your blades? Is it durability? Is it to make it the strongest, densest piece of steel possible so it's impervious, the least amount of pervious to denting?
There's some basic stuff. It's just like when you first learn how to bladesmith, it's like when somebody first learns how to be a bartender. You learn how to make basic drinks. Same thing in bladesmithing. Like a bartender knows how to make an old fashioned. And in bladesmithing, you should learn how to harden and temper the steel so that it is as hard as it can be, but is as tough as it can be. And then there are edge geometries for each different kind of knife. So a chef's knife has a completely different edge geometry and hardness than a sword or a hunting knife or a wood carving knife.
Are you practical, or do you is there some romanticism still involved when you think about your craft?
I make a lot of practical things, but I make stuff that...
I'm here with Jason Knight. Now, we're going to get into a very interesting craft, something that I kind of romanticize when it comes to the samurai sword. But you have all kinds of knowledge when it comes to cutlery. Is that really cutlery?
Cutlery, yeah.
So among many other things. So let's go back though. I wanted to know what built you. Like, how did you get into this? Were you something at a young age?
Well, my last name is Knight, and I guess there's a mythology built around that a little bit. I built it. My dad probably helped me build it some. He would read me Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter of Mars, and there's a lot of sword play in that. He would read Robert E. Howard, Conan stuff, and I was like, I was just into it. I thought it was cool. And in 1977, I saw Star Wars kind of helped ruin me a little bit, and then all the fantasy stuff from the 80s, that was a big thing for me. I liked all that. So I just was always fascinated by swords and edged tools and knives and all this thing. I grew up in a swamp out down in South Carolina, and they've never cut these trees. These are 1,600-year-old plus forest. But I was using a knife to clear trails, and my cousins were real wild Indians. I was only a part, but we would go and play in the swamp, and we all needed a good knife, so it was pretty handy.
That's what a little boy wants. He wants a good knife. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I want a knife.
Yeah, that's right.
So, not to, eat the dessert before we get into the meal here, but I just have to jump ahead. One of my favorite scenes in all the movie, I got two daughters. One daughter has blonde hair, and we call her a yellow hair warrior because when she watches Kill Bill, you know where I'm getting at with this, when Hattori Hanzo makes this sword for Uma Thurman. And it's such a romantic way, and this the folklore of the sword making. They even
no. You want some tea? We don't talk about sword.
So what is it? Yeah, I mean, there's little things about that. There's also a documentary made in the 70s about, I guess, where Tarantino based it off of this sword maker. But do you know the history of this Hattori Hanzo, or the mythology that he references?
Well, Hanzo means razor. That's just a word for razor. So he based it on an actual sword maker, but the words are very Americanized so that we know it's, it just means Hattori Hanzo. So Hanzo means razor.
That's pretty cool.
But it's cool. I really loved it. My daughter fashions herself after Beatrix Kiddo, and she actually is a knife maker. She's a professional bladesmith also.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that something, though, when you saw that, you doing the craft that you do, how did you think that was done? Did you, and the references they have to the Japanese steel?
Well, I saw a documentary when I was a kid on that. The steel is called Tamahagane. And I just didn't really understand what I was watching. They were folding it and folding it. And that's actually getting the impurities out and evening out the carbon content. But that's another way. That's a whole different way to make them than I make. They would use sand beat the iron in the sand, which is also just a completely crazy process to make blades. But I buy steel from a place in Germany, and I use that steel to make my blades for the most part.
And what's your goal for your blades? I got to go into like how you got started, but what's the goal for your blades? Is it durability? Is it to make it the strongest, densest piece of steel possible, so it's impervious, the least amount of pervious to denting, or what is the?
Well, there's some basic stuff. It's just like when you first learn how to bladesmith. It's like when somebody first learns how to be a bartender. You learn how to make basic drinks. The same thing in bladesmith. Like a bartender knows how to make an old fashioned, a martini, and like a margarita. And in bladesmithing, you should learn how to harden and temper the steel so that it is as hard as it can be, but is as tough as it can be. And then there are edge geometries for each different kind of knife. So a chef's knife has a completely different edge geometry and hardness than a sword or a hunting knife or a wood carving knife and things like that. So they all have different chemistry. They all have different edge geometries. They all have different heat treats. It all depends on the actual thing you're making. Now, when I'm making some art piece, I'm having fun, I'll make a sword or something. It matters. It's very important that you make it real. So they're still hardened and tempered. But I don't know who's actually going out there and using swords to, fight these hordes of orcs and other creatures that are there. I don't know, but it's a fun thing to make. It's fun to make them as accurately as you can possibly make.
This is America, man. We want things that we don't really need, but we want them because we want to be ready for what we don't need to be ready for, I guess.
Whatever we imagine. Yeah, right.
That's right. The zombie apocalypse, whatever. All right, now we're going to go back. So let's go back to how does this journey in the profession, how does this, what are some of the milestones? Like, how did you get started? And when did you know you wanted to kind of do this? And tell us about that journey.
So I was drawing pictures of knives since I was a little kid. In fact, it caused me to get straight D's from first grade all the way through graduating. I was a straight D students, but I have A students working for me now. They just did what they were told. And I sat in the back of the class and slept and drew pictures.
That's the way to be successful right there.
Yeah, I wanted to be an artist. I didn't know necessarily I didn't even think there was such a thing as making knives. But then in the 80s sometime, I started to see all these handmade knives. It was a book that was produced every year. It's called Knife. It was like a knife annual. It was all this really pretty artsy photographs of knives. Excuse me. And I just loved that. And then I would research different knife makers. Randall Knives was one. They were down in Florida. And then there was, he's dead now. George Herron, he was in South Carolina where I grew up. And there's a lot of them. But in what I got myself into was bladesmithing, which is I'm forging the steel into the shapes and the dimensions that I want. I'm also grinding them. So I'm not just banging on them and they're all shiny. I forge them and then I still have to grind them. Whereas the stock removal method, you just cut them out and grind them. Both are very difficult no matter how you do it. I just prefer the forging method because I have more control over it. And I got into that about 2001. And I went to a school in Arkansas. It was 2 weeks, American Bladesmith Society, Introduction to Bladesmithing. And I learned some basics of forging and heat treating from a guy named Jay Hendrickson, who I actually just saw this weekend. And I went back and volunteered at this place, the Bill Moran Foundation, and it's near Bill Moran's shop. Bill Moran was one of the founders of the American Bladesmith Society. He taught Jay taught me the basics, just how to basically do it. Like, hey, make an old fashioned, here's how you do it. And from there, I never went back to my job. I worked odd jobs. I was an artist. I did sculpture and carving, but I was working as a tire tech at a place called Gerald's Tires down in Charleston. It was wonderful, but I didn't want to do that forever. So I got myself into more hard and dirtier work by becoming a bladesmith. And I went full-time doing that in 2001. And I rapidly began to come up with designs that were very unique to me. And now I'm not going to say everybody in bladesmithing, but I have influenced the knife making world all the way around the world with my style.
Indeed.
like Wu-Tang style or or Hank Williams Jr. style. I have my own knife making style. So.
That's right. It is. Yeah. I know that. So now, do you romanticize, because there's like an art form to this, and do you still, when you look at blade making, there's another great movie to reference, Last Samurai, the craftsmanship and the detail and the romanticism that goes into making this. Tom Cruise gets this samurai sword at the end of the movie, to fight this battle, and everything that the samurais do are detailed oriented to try to reach a level of close there of perfection. Do you kind of, in your craft, are you practical, or do you kind of, is there some romanticism still involved when you think about your craft? Because to me, knife making has that attached to it.
Well, I'm a lot of different things in knife making. I make a lot of practical things, but I make stuff that people don't figure out how I did it until about 10 years later, 15 years later. So that's kind of one of the things, specifically in bladesmithing, the designs I was doing 15 years ago. Just now, these guys and girls are figuring out how I did it. But I don't know. I like making kitchen knives. That's very practical, but I put my own flair to it. I like making, everyday using knives, everyday carrying knives. We weren't born with fangs and claws. Hopefully we're civilized enough to use a tool. So I like to make the tools. And I've been doing this full-time since I was 27, and now I'm 51. So it didn't take long. And I still feel like I'm at the beginning. I'm still, I got the basics, but I'm still like trying to figure it out.
Really? Because you're like at the top of, you're a big name, up with the industry. So, all right. So I'm curious to know, when did you find out that this German steel was the really, really good? Like, how'd you come about that?
Well, I was using a steel that was made in America called W2. They quit producing it sometimes in the 60s. It's just a really great steel, high carbon vanadium steel. And I ran out of it. And so somebody showed me this stuff, 80 CRV2. It was just being made in Germany. It was just consistent, and I liked it. So I used that. Now, if another one comes along, I'll use it. I'm not loyal to it. I just appreciate it because it's consistency.
Right.
Not magic. The magic is me. I'm the magic. I'm doing the magic. The metal and all that, that's not the magic.
Right.
Yeah.
When did you, realize, holy shit, I can make a living from doing this? When did that come about?
That's the hardest one ever, man. I didn't realize I could make a living. I just decided that I was going to do it. Like that boat that I took in to bladesmithing, and then I built the bridge, and then I burned all that stuff up. And I'm like, I'm making knives. That's it. I'm not going back. And I never did go back. It's very few people are full-time professional knife makers or bladesmiths, especially in bladesmithing. Out of 116 supposed living mastersmiths, and I went down that list, and I know 5 of them are dead, and about more than half of them are retired. There may be 6 or 7 of us that actually make a full-time occupation of making knives, because maybe we're too stupid to do anything else. Maybe we're too clever. Maybe we just have the Picasso mindset and like, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. I'm going to do it. So that's kind of mine. I mean, I think about, I'm a big fan of Pablo Picasso. So I think about some of the struggles he went through in painting, during when the Nazis were occupying France. And he told them, he's like, this one guy showed him a picture of Guernica. He goes, is this your work? He goes, no, you guys did that. I just painted it. And he told that to one Nazi. But I'm just trying to stay in the game and keep making stuff. He was trying to keep doing his work. No matter what happened, he was doing it. And he had like a devil may care attitude. And I just feel like I'm making knives, whether it's good or it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to find when people don't want to purchase anything, I mean, you could really twist their arm, but I make crazy stuff. So I usually come out with something that is a trend setting thing, and I can spot the trends in the future. So that's a lot of talking, but I know it's going to be hot next. So I'm doing it now. And then people go, why are you making that? And I said, wait, you'll see.
Meet the Bolo Pack, the ultimate travel companion that transforms into a hammock, a pop-up tent, and even a cooler. Whether you're hiking, camping, or chilling at the beach, the Bolo Pack has you covered. First up, the Bolo Pack is a sleek, compact backpack, perfect for day trips or long adventures. Need a break? With a simple pull, the Bolo Pack transforms into a relaxing hammock, perfect for catching your breath during hikes. Planning to spend the night? The Bolo Pack also converts into a pop-up tent, giving you shelter wherever you go. And the best part? The Bolo Pack doubles as a cooler, keeping your food and drinks fresh for hours. Let me show you how easy it is to switch between modes. First, the hammock. Just a few simple steps, and you're ready to relax. Next, the pop-up tent for quick shelter setup. And finally, the cooler function, ensuring you stay refreshed on the go. From day hikes to weekend getaways, the Bolo Pack adapts to your needs. Whether you're chilling, camping, or keeping your snacks cool, ready to upgrade your travel game? Get your Bolo Pack today and take your adventures to the next level. Link in the description.
That's right. Hey, look, staying ahead of that wave. Now you did a show. Was it called Forged?
Forged in Fire. Yeah.
Forged Fire. Yeah. Now that must have been nice to get, this is your craft, and then go on there. I mean, was that a good experience for you?
I'll put it this way. I'm glad that it inspires other people to be makers. Yeah. I'm glad that it, other people recognize that, hey, there are bladesmiths out there. Forged in Fire is a TV game show, very entertaining. Yeah. And if you film something for 12 hours and they cut you for 5 minutes, then people go like, man, that guy's a jerk, man. I was like, they're filming us for 12 hours sitting there watching these people who don't know what they're doing make stuff, and it drives me crazy. So they're like, we want you to do 40 more episodes. And I'm like, no, thanks. Thank you.
Well, you seem like, you're like right up there, and it seems like that would be a pain in the ass for somebody that is really, concerned about the craft and doing what you do. That leads me to the next question. I'm dying to know, like, is there one, to me, they're works of art, so is there, one, I have two really important questions. One is, have you ever made a samurai sword? Yeah. I know you make knives.
I have made what I call the brutalist version. My son actually coined this term, calling it a brutalist. So my son Tristan will make a traditional wakizashi or katana. He'll make all the fittings, and you couldn't tell it from you couldn't tell that he was a gaijin making one, or whatever. But I have made variations, anachronism. I'm not interested in samurai swords as much as I am in very old European swords like gladius and old Greek stuff. I'm interested in the ancient swords. But primarily, I'm not making swords. Primarily, I'm making, knives. But I'm well known for kind of reinventing this thing called a kukri, which is a curved knife that was made famous by the Gurkhas during World War II.
Well, okay, then that was my other question is, let's about the Gurkha. Let's talk about that. How long does it take you to make a really good quality knife like that?
Took 40,000 hours plus however I spend working on that specific knife.
Yes, I get that. I know. I got you. I know what that's all about. So that, yes, of course. Now that all that knowledge and all that information and all that effort leading up to that, so, and then how long would you say it takes you to make that knife now?
I don't know. It takes as long as it takes. It
takes as long as it takes.
Like my watch doesn't have a second hand on it. This old Panerai it's a 1950. The model's called the 1950. No second hand.
I like that.
I don't know.
When you said that, that reminds me of
a
like
couple days. I think a couple days would be as accurate as I could get.
Okay. Well, but that's like the old FedEx, the machines broke down at the FedEx terminal in Tennessee, right where you're at. That's where the hub is, right? When the old hub was in Tennessee, I believe, in FedEx, and the machine broke down. This is, I'm paraphrasing. And they brought in an electrician because they were losing tons of millions of dollars a minute, I guess, even back then, because of one hub. And then they did open up the panel and turned a knob, and everything just started running. He goes, "Oh, that's amazing." It's like, "What do I owe you?" He's like, $1,000. And he's like, "I want to see an invoice for that." And he's like, "All right." It was like $1 for turning the screw, knowing which screw to turn, $999.
Yeah. Well, my work has become a commodity over the last couple of years. And just as an example, I traded the knife for an Airstream. I made a sword for a Mustang 5.0 convertible. Traded one just recently for a motorcycle. Traded for pretty slick watches.
Yeah.
Everybody's familiar with Rolex. I've traded, but I'm not mature enough for a lot of this stuff. So the only thing I have right now is it's got the motorcycle still, but I like to trade for stuff. But the cool part for me is the pieces become a commodity. So I take my designs and I have other people produce them, or I have other people that work for me make the knife, my design. I put my name on it, but we call it something a little different. It's a shop-made knife. So I did something to it, but I didn't forge it and make it from start to finish. So I make a lot of varieties. But when I make one-off custom pieces, I just find out what the market is going to bear, and I allow people to just go mad dog at it. So if I post something up for sale on Instagram, it's gone within about 2 seconds, and then I got to deal with 40 people going, "I want that piece," and they go, "Well," I was like, "It's gone now," And there's a better way to do it. I really rather have more dealers to get the knives. Like if you go to, there's a place, Arizona Custom Knives. They buy knives from me. They're actually down in Florida now, but they buy knives and resell them for me. And I don't care what they go for in a secondary market. Yeah. They average $3,500 to $6,000 for some of these knives, and it's cool. I don't touch that. I just sell it to them for what I sell it to. That keeps me busy.
You don't want to be like the Kendra Scott of knives, like she's a $1 billion business, man. I mean, what she does, because your design.
I'm like the Metallica of bladesmithing.
Yeah.
Somebody else said that. I just like to quote them. I've been around a long time. I'm still doing some badass stuff.
Right.
Yeah, somebody else said that, not me.
So that's pretty badass compliment. So, all right. So now when you look back on the pantheons of your knives, what are some of the ones that you really stand out that you remember? Oh yeah, that was one special one right there.
Sometimes it was just like when I started doing this thing, this knife it's probably the most copied thing. That's just got this raised shark fin, kind of a clip on it, and subtly recurved. I won awards for the knife. I had other people get my knife on the cover of Blade magazine. Other people have made that knife and won awards for it. So that was a cool one. I don't make a lot of them quite like that anymore. And then coming up with different finishes, like everybody was doing these hand rubbed, this satin finishes on carbon steel, so it'll rust. So I just started doing this bluing, this rust bluing, which I learned from a guy from Purdy shotguns. And Purdy's they're crazy expensive shotguns from England, very old, very famous for what they are. But I learned how to do rust bluing. Basically, the guy told me, and I don't know if I did it exactly like they did, but it worked. But I did work. So I started making them black, and they looked badass. And I never stopped doing that. And now I'm playing with some new. Then I started putting fullers. It's like design elements that I would add into the knife. I didn't invent fullers. I just made them cool. Everybody would say it's a blood groove, but it's not. It's called a fuller. Just a groove in the blade, makes it lighter, but looks cool. And people were doing it, but I made it really popular. There's a lot of stuff like that, just elements that I've added in. The knives themselves vary. They're different kinds of knives. It may even be a kitchen knife. It could be a Plimpton knife. It could be any kind of a knife. Most of the time, when people get a knife, they get it This ain't one I made.
There, he's whipping one out right there.
This is Heretic.
Is that your knife?
Yours, Jr. Right? Huh?
That's yours, right?
Well, no, this is my friend. This is Tony Marfione Jr. His company is Heretic. And I just bought one of these from him just recently because this is a cool knife. Now, his dad, Tony Marfione, he has Microtech. His dad made these things just cool.
Just pops in and out right there. He's pressing a button. He's pressing a button and it's just popping in and out.
It's voice activated. Open. Close.
No, I see that thumb moving.
I didn't make that, but that's a cool piece.
Yeah.
It's just innovative stuff. This is the cool stuff. And in bladesmithing, it's weird because there's a tradition and a lot of they're not even old. These guys ain't even half of me. They're not much older than me. You know, they're boomers, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I'm not trash talking to boomers, but they have their place. And, I'm Generation X. So I kind of, I was not raised by anybody.
That's right. I'm Generation X also. You got home and you just did it all on your own, kind of.
You're lucky if you had a grandma to grab you by the scruff of your neck and say, okay, come in here and eat something. And
that's what we had. We had a grandmother. That's what I had. I got home to a grandmother. Did you get home to a grandmother?
I went home to my grandma, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I walked home to a grandmother. I didn't have anybody else at home. So the grandmother always cooking something.
My grandma would sign a report card for me. She's like, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not telling anybody. It's a D's all the way down, Grandma.
You did something right. All right. So now what's the long-term play? You plan things out. What give us the 30,000 foot view of where you want to go next.
So my long-term play is setting up a foundation. It's called the Be a Maker Foundation. And I want to just promote the art of making. It could be blacksmith, it could be bladesmith, it could be pottery, it could be sculpture, welding, all kind of stuff. That's coming. That's the future. I have a school in East Tennessee. It's called the Makers Forge Studio. It's here in my shop. I have people come from all over the world. I do corporate training here. I teach individuals. We make knives and we have a blast. And in the corporate training, if your people don't work together, they'll work together after they hang with me. I work with special operations people. I do training with them. Just making knives. It's nothing like what you think. We're just making the group gel together. But then I do individual classes. You come, you make a Damascus kitchen knife with me. Now you got it. Now you can see if you're a collector and you do this and you're like, wow, that's hard. And if you're crazy like the rest of you, you're like, oh, I want to do it again. So, and then my other thing, I'm building some Airbnbs. I have a mountain. So I'm building some Airbnbs up here. So when people come to the school, they can stay here. You can see all the way to North Carolina from the top of my mountain. So it's really beautiful. Yeah. And I'm just trying to do a bunch of things. I have knives that I'm putting in production with some companies. I'm actually operating 2 companies right now. One is everything's made in kind of Taiwan and Italy. And the other one is I'm working on everything being made right here in-house. But that's really hard, but I don't care. I'm gonna do it anyway. So.
That's nice, man. I'll tell you what. There's this background of knife and sword making, and just I think they're the one and the same kind of mentality, and that it's just this long history of like quality, and perfection, and trying to, it's just an art form that's so respected to me. And I've seen so many movies where it was like, man, that's where, when somebody strives and excels at something really well, a craft, knife making seems like it exploits that, so I salute you on it, man, because it sounds like, you're at that level, and I know you think you're just getting started, like you say.
Yeah. Well, I look at it like this. I got my master's rating in 2007. That was the beginning of just, I have basics understood. So now, but I still look at myself as I'm an expert, no doubt, but I'm always learning some. I'm a student also. And I want to make something cool. I want to make something that's iconic, that you remember, that you enjoy, that you can, like an heirloom. But I just want to keep doing it because it's what God made me. God made me to make knives, and that's what he did. So that's what I'm doing. I make knives.
and you make them really well. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Great stories. Well, I can't wait to see what you come out with next. I'll be watching for your Instagram because I know you post a lot over there, and it looks really great, man. These things are just gorgeous. I highly suggest everybody go to Jason Knight's Instagram. What's your Instagram handle again?
I have to look it up. It's I think it's Jason Knight.
I love this guy. He's just making his knives, man. He's all wrapped up in there because these things are gorgeous.
Jason Knight Knives, yeah.
Jason Knight Knives. Perfect. Hey, man, thank you so much for sharing. This is awesome.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to Bolotor.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.